And we're live.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'd like to call this special council meeting of the town of Lincoln of August 3rd, 2021 to order. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sandra Easton, Mayor of the town of Lincoln and Chair of today's special council meeting. We're meeting electronically through Zoom during this declared emergency period. Members of the public may observe the proceedings by accessing the live webcast at our YouTube channel. The Shononton people have called these lands home for thousands of years, and more recently, the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee have been sharing the land as one dish, one spoon treaty territory. We would like to acknowledge the enduring resilience of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who call this territory home. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll of council so that we can confirm everyone's attendance and to confirm quorum?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Councillor and Deputy Mayor Regima.
Here, thank you.
Councillor Russell.
Here.
Councillor Pachariva.
I'm here.
Councillor Brunet.
Here.
Councillor McPherson.
Here.
Councillor Micklick.
Here.
Councillor Timmers.
Present.
Councillor Reimer.
Here.
And Mayor Easton.
Here.
And we have quorum.
Thank you. In addition, I want to take a moment to welcome the staff we have joining us today electronically. Chief Administrative Officer Mike Kokopoulos, Director of Finance and Administration and Innovation Lawrence Wagner, Director of Special Projects Kathleen Dale, Director of Planning and Development Matt Bruder, Director of Economic Development and Communications Paul Vianney, Director of Public Works David Graham, Director of Community Services Shannon Mackay, Fire Chief Greg Hudson, Deputy Clerk Devan Kripp. Moderating and clerking the meeting today, we have our Director of Legislative Services and Town Clerk Julie Kirkolos. IT staff are in attendance, and also joining us a little bit later is Matt Robinson, the Director of GO, Implementation Office from the region of Niagara. As this is a virtual meeting, I'll ask that we follow some procedures during this electronic meeting. Should there be a connection or service disruption for the chair, or if quorum is lost, the chair and or clerk will call a 10-minute recess to reconnect and to regain quorum. And if quorum is lost, the meeting will be adjourned. If connection is lost from the chair, deputy mayor, or the vice chair will resume the meeting. Once reconnection is achieved, the chair will assume their role. Each member of council who wishes to speak, press the raise hand feature on your video call, and the clerk will track our speakers list today and then invite you to speak when I open it for comments or questions. Also, when I finish reading the motion and announcing the mover and seconder, the clerk will then call out the vote by reading each member of council's name out loud. Please remember to take yourselves off mute during this portion of the meeting so that you can confirm you are in support or opposed. And when not speaking, please remember to put yourselves on mute. Do members have a declared interest? I have one declared interest that has been that I've been notified of regarding agendas 14.3 and 14.4. Councillor Timmers.
Yes, thank you, Mary Easton. I'm declaring a conflict of interest with agenda items 14.3 and 14.4. 14.3 bylaw number 2021-59Z564 and 14.4 bylaw 2021-60.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor. All right, now we just have had a word that the GO presentation is going to require a little bit of modification in terms of the timing, as the team is also presenting in another municipality. So the clerk will help us with that as information comes forward. Let's move then to item number 6, and announcement by members. Do members have any announcements? And please remember, you have a limit of 3 items. I also have Councillor Timmers, who's notified us that she has an announcement. If you wouldn't mind starting, Councillor Timmers, and we'll see who else comes along.
Thank you very much, Mayor Easton. I do have a brief announcement regarding a momentous and significant event that happened in our community. And I thought it was very pertinent to get a little bit of a summary and hear what happened on that day. And what I'm referring to is the grand opening of our Lincoln Museum and Cultural Center. So I have this little summary on behalf of Jessica Wilson, our Cultural Development Coordinator. The Lincoln Museum and Cultural Center, home of the Jordan Historical Museum of the 20, officially opened its doors to the public on July 24th, 2021. The grand opening celebration will be held on the weekend of October 2nd, 2021. The soft opening was well attended by the public with over 100 visitors on opening weekend. Since opening day, the museum has seen over 297 visitors come through its doors. In July of 2016, attendance was 315 for an entire month. The visitors have been both locals and tourists. The reception from the public has been very positive, with many individuals commenting on the quality of the exhibits, the level of knowledge by the interpreters, and the variety of engagement opportunities for people of all ages. Tourists have really appreciated the opportunity to learn more about our community that they are visiting. The museum backpack program has been a particular favorite of the younger visitors, many of whom have made good use of the programming room to sit and work on fun activities provided within the backpacks. The 4 exhibits on display include Fracture, an exploration into the intricate folk art tradition of the Mennonites who settled in the local vicinity in the late 18th and early 19th century. Common Ground, an exhibit that showcases some of the archaeological finds uncovered during the building of the museum. Belonging, an exhibit that tells the story of some of the many diverse people and communities that have called Lincoln home. And Our Story, which explores the history of Lincoln from early settlement to post-World War II. I just thought that was really important to share that, and I hope that anyone watching in the community will definitely go and check this beautiful new facility that we have in our town. And just one other little point I have to add, the very first visitor who was waiting at the door and to walk in was former Mayor Ray Conkle. So I thought that was very fitting. Thank you very much, Mayor Easton, for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Absolutely. Great news. Thanks very much, Councillor. Now, Madam Clerk, I don't see any other hands.
I do not.
Thank you very much. We'll move on, councillors, then to delegations, and we have no delegations this evening. We'll then move to item 8.1, special council minutes of July 12th, 2021. I have a motion moved by Councillor, do members of council have any questions first? There being none, I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor Brunet that council approve the minutes of the following meetings of council, special council minutes of July 12th, 2021. Madam Clerk, would you please call the vote?
Thank you, Councillor Brunet.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Miklick.
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva.
Yes.
Councillor Reimer.
Yes.
Councillor Rajima.
Yes.
Councillor Russell.
Yes.
Councillor Timmers.
Yes.
Mayor Easton.
Support.
And that carries.
We're moving on then to receive and file council information package, and we have no items to be brought forward this evening. We have recommendations from standing committees, and we are now considering the following. Item 10.1, Committee of the Whole Workshop Minutes of July 21st, 2021. Item 10.2, Committee of the Whole Minutes of July 26th, 2021. And item 10.3, Committee of the Whole Workshop Minutes of July 28th, 2021. Do members have any questions? Just identify the meeting date, if you do.
Seeing none, Madam Mayor.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Njima and seconded by Councillor Mikulik that council approve the following recommendations from Standing Committee. Committee of the Whole Workshop Minutes of July 21st, 2021. Committee of the Whole Minutes of July 26th, 2021. Committee of the Whole Workshop Minutes of July 28th, 2021. Madam Clerk, would you please call the vote?
Thank you, Councillor Bernay,
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Mikulik,
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Yes.
and that carries.
All right, Madam Clerk, I take it we're going to make a change with item 5 then and keep on going.
We just have one item left and then we'll move into the presentation. I do see them all here, so.
Okay, all right.
And so the next item, Madam Mayor, is notice of motion, and we have none at this time.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So I will admit the staff, just one moment, from the region as well as go.
Yep.
And tonight, Madam Mayor, I do see Matt Robinson, Matt Greenfield, Heather Talbot, and Scott Fraser attending.
Very good. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Can we have visual?
Hi, Matt.
Good evening.
Would you like me to share my screen for the presentation, or will you be doing that from your end?
I can do that from my end if that works.
Absolutely.
Well,
Okay.
you got here in quick time, Mr. Robinson, with your team.
Madam Mayor, we were just in the town of Grimsby and gave the same presentation and went through our Q&A. So I appreciate council's indulgence in moving things around slightly to accommodate us being two places at once.
Very
Absolutely.
good. And welcome, Matt, and welcome Heather Talbot as well. So, Matt, obviously you've been taking this around, and so I think we'll just open the floor so that you can just carry on, so that the council can hear the most recent information.
Perfect. So thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, council, and thanks for the opportunity to be here again to discuss the latest progress we've made on transit governance. I'm pleased to be here on behalf of the Linking Niagara Transit Committee and the Area CAO Governance Steering Committee. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to continue our discussion and consultation with council regarding the future of transit in Niagara and take another step forward toward an integrated, consolidated transit system. As mentioned, with me here tonight are Heather Talbot and Scott Fraser from our project team, familiar faces from our last consultation. They'll assist me at the end of the presentation with any Q&A that council may have. I also wanted to recognize our regional councillors, Mayor Easton and Councillor Foster, and recognize the hard work of town staff, in particular, your CAO, Mike Kirkopoulos, who's been a very active participant in the CAO Governance Steering Committee guiding this work. So tonight is an update on the progress that has been made since we were before council earlier this year. At that time, we presented the results of the Niagara Transit Governance Study, as well as an associated financial model, and received feedback from every municipality in Niagara. In particular, we heard that the previously proposed financial model didn't work for Lincoln. There was a need for more direct representation on the board and the need to provide additional detail regarding future service levels under the current on-demand system. What we want to demonstrate tonight is that we've listened. We've heard you. We want to get this proposal right. We took your feedback and along with the 13 CAOs, have developed revised strategies we hope meet council's expectations. Tonight is a chance to review those revised models and for you to provide any additional feedback. To be clear, tonight is a second round of consultation and an opportunity for further discussion. Tonight does not represent the triple majority vote to move forward with consolidation. That's anticipated to come later this year after we've heard from all municipalities again and reflected any additional feedback we receive. You told us last time that the financial strategy, the board composition, and the service standards needed to be more closely examined. This feedback was very consistent with what we heard from your peers. These were three common themes that emerged during the first phase of consultation and are where we focused our efforts to revise the proposal. So to address that feedback, the smaller CAO working group was expanded and reformed as the CAO Transit Governance Steering Committee, or GSC. The GSC included all 13 CAOs from across Niagara, including Mr. Kirkopoulos, and was supported by senior staff from municipalities across the region, such as treasurers, communications professionals, and transit leads. Its mandate was to review all of the feedback received and revise the financial, governance, and service models to reflect what we heard. It's the output of this process, which was reached by consensus among the CAOs, that we're here to share with you tonight. You also have a staff report before you, and we certainly appreciate the recommendations that your CAOs put forward. Last time, we clearly heard the financial strategy did not work for all municipalities. As a direct result, we went back to first principles and examined a wide range of alternatives. In fact, 11 financial alternatives were considered and analyzed. The core objective was to ensure we address this key point of municipal feedback. In particular, we needed to ensure that municipalities were paying for the services they received, given the fact that there's differing levels of service already existing across many municipalities. The new financial strategy, based directly on municipal feedback, now uses 12 special levy tax rates, one for each municipality, linked directly to the service hours you receive. This service-based principle means that residents will pay for the service they receive both now and as growth happens in the future. Under the new model, your regional special levy pays for service in your municipality. The financial strategy also incorporates a number of additional features, such as the establishment of a capital reserve to ensure that the future needs of the Commission are also met. So what does this mean for Lincoln specifically? Today, Lincoln residents contribute a combined $1.2 million toward transit. This is a combination of $1 million in costs on their regional tax bill with $200,000 local levy. This combined contribution supports the NRT on-demand service, trips both within town and leaving to adjacent municipalities, connection and transfer onto the NRT system, and access to the Niagara Specialized Transit Service. Under the revised financial model, on opening day of the integrated system in 2023, the cost to Lincoln residents have been significantly reduced from the previously proposed assessment-based approach. All transit costs would still transition to the regional levy as part of the 12 special levy model, and the town's local municipal budget would no longer include transit costs. In 2025, as the first phase of service improvements are implemented, the on-demand hours of operation are proposed to expand, resulting in an additional 3 hours of weekday and Saturday service in town, as well as the introduction of Sunday and holiday service for town residents. The costs for that service will be directly tied to the service hours delivered, in keeping with the overall principle of the updated financial strategy of your residents will only pay for the services they receive. So the second area of feedback we heard was related to the composition of the Commission board. In particular, we heard that additional or more frequent representation on the board was a priority. The revised composition is a transitional board be established for the first 3 years, comprised of 15 elected representatives from across Niagara with at least one dedicated representative for each municipality. The transitional board, which would be made up of regional and/or local councillors, directly reflects what we heard from you about the need for enhanced elected representation, providing an opportunity for elected officials to guide the establishment of the Commission and its initial operation directly for its early years. The Commission board would be supported, as noted previously, by an advisory board, which has since been expanded to 20 public and interested party representatives that would provide non-binding input and advice to the Commission board on a quarterly basis. After the first 3 years, an external review of the transitional model would be undertaken to examine if the fully elected composition of the Commission board, its size, and its share of representation is still or actually achieving the outcomes of the commission. So the third theme that emerged was the need for additional detail on how service would be maintained and enhanced, especially in the early days of the commission. To provide this detail, a project team led by one of our local transit managers was established to develop a series of service standards. The approach of a series of standards was chosen because as of right now, every transit service in Niagara operates a little bit differently in terms of hours of operation, service coverage, frequency, and other factors. And so establishing a common baseline for the future presents the best method to integrate and standardize those differences. This increase will align the hours of operation of on-demand with the services that it connects to, such as St. Catharines or Welland Transit to the east, and support getting to and from GO trains in the future. Think of a commuter using transit in the morning to connect to an early GO train or to their job in St. Catharines, or the family who's gone to a Blue Jays game as a returning later in the evening, or Brock students studying late at night. Without effective local transit operating early and late in the day, these transit options are severely limited. The standards that were developed are intended to act as a guideline to the future commission, indicating the types of enhancements that it might choose to undertake, but allows municipalities the confidence in knowing how service will expand in their communities over the coming years. The rollout of the standards have been grouped into 3 phases. Phase 1 being standardization of operating hours. Phase 2, the combination of specialized and on-demand services. And Phase 3, a network review once the system has optimized. As we've discussed, transit in Lincoln today is currently delivered through the NRT On-Demand pilot program. Specialized services are also provided by Niagara Region through NST, Niagara Specialized Transit. Under a commission, on-demand or demand responsive transit will be continued and shared across many municipalities in Niagara. For Lincoln, this means that in Phase 1, the hours the service operates would be extended, adding another hour early in the morning from 6 to 7 a.m. and extending service at night between 10 p.m. and midnight, and now introduce Sundays and holidays. In Phase 2, the Commission will look at the opportunity to harmonize the on-demand and specialized transit services into one combined operation. This will be considered as a way to more efficiently deploy the resources of the Commission, given that these 2 services share a number of similarities. And in Phase 3, the Commission would undertake a comprehensive network review to then examine further opportunities to grow and enhance the network, especially as GO train service expands. While I don't have any additional specifics to share on that front tonight, what I can say is that our work with Metrolinx, the province, and town staff continues very aggressively, and we hope that we'll have more to say on GO train expansion in Lincoln in the very near future. So what comes next? We've committed to listening, addressing, and integrating your feedback to create a proposal that can be successful, ensuring you have all of the information you need as a council to make an informed decision when the time arises later this fall. So we hope that the revised strategies that we've presented tonight, the financial model, service standards, and the board composition have addressed the feedback and concerns council identified during the first round of consultation. What we're asking for tonight is any additional feedback you may have on the revised strategies. From here, we'll incorporate this feedback into the final strategies that form the consideration vote later this fall. So with that, Madam Mayor, I thank you and Council for the opportunity to be here tonight, and we welcome any questions that Council might have.
Well, 9 minutes and 27 seconds. You've obviously got this very well tuned up, Mr. Robinson. So let's, I'm just going to first go to Mr. Krikopoulos in case he's had any thoughts as this was being presented, and then we'll open the floor for questions. Mr. Krikopoulos.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to all of Council, I don't have a lot to add to what Mr. Robinson and his team have presented. I think, as Matt said, this is really another chance for all of us to hear from members of Council, any concerns you may have, any issues you may have, and work over the next month or two so that when we bring this back in the fall, when Matt and the team, I think, collate all they've heard from all the municipalities, we've addressed any of the concerns that are on the table. So I will let Matt and the team, I think, answer most of the questions. Definitely Lawrence and I and Director Graham have also been involved in a number of the conversations and a number of the meetings, so we can try to assist where possible.
Okay, thank you very much. And Council, as is noted, once we're completed, once all of your questions are completed, we'll go directly to report AD 1621, and we'll address it. So first of all, we have Councillor Russell. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Matt. Matt, thank you very much for the presentation. Again, I do see some movement towards the positive side from the last update from March the 1st. Just one concern that I have, and again, I'd like to get your feedback on it, is I think it's page 9, the top of the file is revised strategies theme 1, where it's kind of got the dates 2020 to 2025 kind of extrapolated out with the costs. Back in March, you extrapolated that out to 2029. And the costs right now seem to be basically still in line with what was presented back then. I know it was a concern because after 2025, the costs ramp up dramatically. And we go from basically having a 1.2 million contribution, or sorry, a 0.2 million contribution from the town up to, I believe it's almost a 1.8 million contribution from our residents. I'm just wondering if you can provide feedback if that's changed at all, or if that is what we are to expect down the road to be coming out of our taxpayers' wallets.
So through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, it's a great question. And given the fact that the financial model has shifted, I think the principle of the service you have is the service you pay for is the principle here. So where we looked out and those costs escalated from 2025 through 2029, that was actually predicated on achieving and redistributing the existing overall budget in the assessment-based model. With a user pay model, or the town is allocated X thousand service hours, that is the only increase that the town of Lincoln will see over that period of time, is the increase in service directly connected to the town's on-demand service increases. So I also have Ms. Talbot and Mr. Fraser here to assist in the Q&A, and perhaps I can call on Ms. Talbot to provide some additional detail on that window between 2025 and 2029 that Councillor Russell was referring to, that does not appear now, but did appear under the assessment-based model we presented previously.
Go ahead, Ms. Talbot.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. When you're looking at a forecast, obviously each year would be subject to budget approval. So I think when we initially extrapolated out that far, we were really giving the consultant outlook of what could be achieved with service hours and what that cost would be. And within that initial model, we were looking at an assessment base, so how those costs would be allocated. And we thought it was important to see under the assessment-based model how those costs would be distributed. Under the revised strategy, we wanted to keep it into steps that we can see, that we know we'll see, but each year will still be subject to budget approval. So each year moving forward, there should be a plan. And within that plan, part of this revised plan is that the commission will now take a service, will look at the entire service profile and look at what is best under those growth projections of population, where the demand is, and will come forward with a business case that will be subject to approval.
Okay, as a follow-up through you, Your Worship. So the numbers then, are they still pretty close, would you say, to what was forecast back in March?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think I can't say whether they're close, because when you look at anything 10 years out, you really don't know that far out. But what we do know is that on year one upload, you will have more or better service than you have today because it continues to evolve. And within the first 2 years, your service hours will go from 5,500 service hours within your community to 8,800 service hours within your community. And those costs are associated with what you see here. So there's tangible results that are associated with the costs. Beyond that, if Lincoln, starts to grow faster and that demand is there, I suspect that you would want that transit to service your community, and those costs would be associated with that service. So there's that direct line instead of knowing that you are going to be subsidizing a growth in another community. The growth in your community will be applied to your community. So it's a much closer tie, and you're not held to what's happening in other communities.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, Your Worship, through you.
Yes, go ahead.
So with that being said, then why not look at an actual service correlation to cost instead of the availability of the service? Why not use actual usage? And the reason I say that is, again, when we look at some of the projections for some of the bigger municipalities like St. Catharines and Niagara Falls, they have a much higher proportion of usage or projected usage. I think it's around 70%, and yet their funding is less than that proportion, where ours is going to be about 2%, and our funding is greater than our proportion. So there's some, like, it just doesn't seem like the math is necessarily calibrated to what the actual usage is going to be.
Through you, Madam Mayor, actually the model before you, the funding model, is directly tied to the services you receive. And what's missed here, because the costs within St. Catharines and Niagara Falls and Welland, they account for 77% of the cost, and they're being allocated 74% of the total network costs. Those are net operating costs. And what's not really revealed here is within those communities, because of that population density, they're recovering 30, 40, 50% of their transit costs. Whereas in the smaller communities, because you don't have the population density, you really only recover about 10% of your operating costs. So in actual fact, that by combining the network, you're realizing a bit of a support by those larger communities who recover more at the fare box. And then because some costs are being diverted, maybe it's not 77% anymore through the funding model, it's 74%. Really, you're connecting to those routes and utilizing those services within those communities. So that small percentage, when really you have access to the entire network, it is fairly small in the grand scheme of what you would pay alone without that support of the efficiencies of the other areas.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And Councillor Bernay?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Robinson. Matt, thanks for the presentation. Thanks for Heather's explanation to Councillor Russell's question. I'm going to kind of try to extrapolate on that in terms of my concerns about costs. And when I say that, I want to preface by saying, Matt, I think you know that this council over the last 5 to 6 years has been supportive of transit. You know, we've been pushing for the GO bus stop and U-Link, and we've been supportive of transit. But we all know that transit, coming with transit comes a cost. And we can say that of anything. We can say about recreation arenas, we can make a long list. But I appreciate the fact that you guys have massaged this from the last time we saw you, and you've kind of tweaked the financial strategy. But this is short term. My concern, through you, Madam Mayor, to the delegation is the long-term financial strategy. And when I say that, every time we as a municipality look at doing something in Lincoln, the response we always get from the region is it has to be budgeted, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's waste management. The question is always coming back with an answer, well, we need to prioritize. So at what point is there a long-term strategy that our taxpayers in Lincoln, because there's only one taxpayer, we can say, you know, there's a regional levy and there's nothing to the Lincoln budget, but there's only one taxpayer. That Lincoln taxpayer is putting money towards the regional levy the municipal levy, and the school board tax. So there's one tax, there's one pocket. So at what point is there going to be a strategy? And maybe this is a long-term, bigger conversation than what we're looking at tonight. But my concern about costs as we move forward is around the regional council table, when they're trying to squish in transit in 2025, 2026, 2027, and we're hearing that we can't fix our roads, that we can't put up street lights, that we can't fix our sewers because there's not enough money to go around. The long-term strategy is my concern. And I'm wondering if someone could comment on that. And like I say, maybe in fairness, this is a much bigger conversation down the road.
Mr. Robinson.
Through you, Madam Mayor, perhaps I'll let Ms. Talbot speak to the long-term strategy. I think what has been laid out, though, Councillor Brunet, is an expectation with council that in going down this path, there is the service plan which lays out the obligations to council in meeting those expectations going forward. And perhaps that is built into some of the commitments in this triple majority process. Everything is subject to budget, as you point out very rightly. But I think what we're attempting to do with the service model and the financial model is to indicate to council the cost of this consolidation for that long term, both from 2023 through 2027. So, Ms. Talbot, perhaps you wanted to add anything additional with regard to the long-term commitments and how things are being positioned to regional council going forward.
Certainly, through you, Madam Mayor. I know again, it would be difficult for me to forecast out beyond 2025 because there are so many conflicting requirements and needs. And we know that this is a tough question every year. The idea is that we try to establish something in the short term that really elevates the service that you'll receive collectively across Niagara. And we've also incorporated a capital reserve because we know that even capital needs each year are very difficult. And without the capital reserve, we can't be assured the service delivery. So we really wanted to kind of create this, this commission with enough financials to sustain a very complete and comprehensive service delivery across Niagara. Beyond 2025, I really can't. I can only speculate because of all the conflicting needs. But I think leading to 2025, 2023 upload, you're very comparable to where you are today. You can see tangible results within your service delivery, within your community, within 2024 and 2025. So really, there are some tangible results that you will see, and the commission should be able to realize its capital needs moving forward, and that sets the commission up on a very solid financial framework.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, if I could just ask one additional question.
Yes, go ahead.
So on in our agenda on page 41 of 125 under the board composition, it says that the Governance Steering Committee, the GSC, has recommended that a transitional commission board be established for a 3-year period comprised of 15 elected officials. So I'm wondering through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Robinson, so is that something that's going to be reviewed at the end of 3 years? How is that going to flow? How is that going to roll out?
So through you, Madam Mayor, I'll actually call on Mr. Fraser to speak to that period of time and then perhaps what happens beyond that.
Yes, thank you. So through the mayor, when we had this discussion with the GSC, the recommendation was for a 3-year transitional period of elected officials. And the focus on the elected officials was really to make sure that there is strong guidance in the early days of the commission, especially reflecting the feedback we heard from many municipalities during the first phase for the requirement of greater or more direct representation on the board itself. The previous model had a rotating structure where some municipalities were only being provided representation periodically. So the move to a 15-member board provides direct representation to each municipality for a 3-year period. At the end of that 3-year period, there would be an external review undertaken by a third-party consulting assignment to evaluate whether or not that model is the one that is right and that it's working for the board moving forward. It would examine things such as whether or not that size of that board is correct, whether or not the share of representation between municipalities is working properly, and if other models such as a hybrid model that would contain both elected and publicly appointed members, such as is in St. Catharines today with their transit commission, would be more appropriate as well. So at the end of that 3-year period, that review would be undertaken, and then the recommendations of that review brought back to the commission board for whatever action it deems appropriate.
Okay, Scott, thank you very much. Thanks very much, Mr. Fraser, for that. Councillors, I want to check with you because the audio was really difficult. Did everyone hear what Mr. Fraser had to say? It was absolutely clear? Okay, great. That's fine. Thank you very much. Councillor, did you have any further response to Mr. Fraser?
No, I think that was a fairly fulsome response, and I appreciate it very much. And thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to ask my questions, and thank you for the delegation for the presentation.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you very much, Mayor Easton. Through you to Mr. Robinson, thank you again for coming, detailing your plan and what's hoped for in the future. I just, I love the transit system that we currently have. I think it's we had the U-Link once upon a time. It was an initiative brought forward by the previous council. I think it was working, and then it got even better with the on-demand transit, which is what I think is a fabulous way to go. That is currently subcontracted to a private company, I believe, that is managing this for us, I believe. So it's currently costing $200,000 on the local levy, plus you're receiving our portion of the gas tax that was once upon a time directed towards the town of Lincoln, towards U-Link. So the question I have is, with what I'm seeing with the numbers and the increased servicing, I struggle with the numbers that it's going to be twice as good. And even if it was twice as good, that would come to around 600,000 in my books. If it was twice as good, like the numbers that I'm seeing, is it going to be 3 times as good in 2023?
You're talking about the service, Councillor?
The service in relation to the cost. What I'm looking at here is basically more governance, is more cost associated with governance and implementing a transit system.
Okay, all right. Mr. Robinson, can you explain or just review the costs of the governance?
I'm going to pass things to Ms. Talbot to review the financial impacts.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Talbot.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. So currently you're spending $175,000 net levy on the transit. That's your contribution right now. There is, the town of Lincoln is eligible for $200,000 in gas tax, which is coming to Niagara region at the moment. Under a levy contribution of $175,000, the town of Lincoln would only realize $130,000 in gas tax. So under your current system, you're contributing $300,000, and the services you're receiving are $400,000 worth of on-demand. As you noted earlier, you were originally using the U-Link. The U-Link gave you 2,100 hours of service a year. Your current on-demand, you're realizing about 5,000 service hours a year. So you're actually paying the same as you did with the U-Link, but you've already escalated to double the service hours. Under the proposed financial model, we are also increasing those service hours beyond the 5,000, and you're going to be closer by 2025 to about 8,800 service hours. So I could say that you're almost 4 times better off under the current financial approach than where you would be alone. There's a lot of give and take on the gas tax, so it's really not a dollar for dollar, and it's really intended to be used for capital. That's what the program is established, and that's how MTO wants to use it. So within the financial strategy, because collectively across Niagara, we municipalities who don't own capital use about $1.5 million a year to offset operating costs. So within the financial strategy, we have removed that from the operating base so that we can ensure that we have capital replacements moving forward, in addition to the reserve that we're setting up. So we want to utilize the gas tax every year to really replace the fleet, and then only have smaller requests from council to supplement those vehicle replacements.
Does that help you, Councillor Nicollet?
It's a lot of information, I'll review that, but it's just, I'm looking at this and when I look at the data, I'm not sure what the ridership is on a Saturday. I'm not sure what it would be on a Sunday. I can see on the data what it is in the mornings, or what it, how it drops off in the evenings. The metrics reports that we receive. So these are the questions I have as far as return on investment when it comes to, jumping in to this sort of an investment, along with the governance, where I feel in the beginning of the spirit of moving people within the town of Lincoln, I feel it was pretty simple the way it is. And I feel that residents are quite happy with the costs. So I'm just trying to weigh the numbers and look forward to more information when I read about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor McClick. Maybe we'll talk about that a little more later. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Matt, Heather, and Scott for coming tonight. And yes, obviously you listened when you went out the previous time, and there's a lot of changes here. And I don't have questions that are that much unique to the questions you've already heard. I'm going to start with governance. And the reading through and listening to the presentation, the feeling I get is that we'll give them what they've asked for to get the thing through the majority vote and a couple of years of actually being aboard, and then we'll go and get what we wanted to get initially. And I reference on page 11 of the region's report, where it states the GSC maintains the position that the establishment of a hybrid governing model remains a preferred outcome for the future permanent board structure and should be strongly considered during the year 3 review. So it kind of sounds like you're giving us a bit of a soother for a couple of years, and then we go ahead working with the region, I assume, to get the board we want. Can you make comment on that, please?
Absolutely. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor McPherson, I'll let Mr. Fraser speak to the composition and the transition and what happens beyond year 3.
So thank you. Through the mayor, as we identified in the report, what we heard the first time from a number of councils was that additional or direct representation of the board was a key area of priority and feedback for them. We took that feedback to heart, and when we took all of the feedback from across Niagara back to the Governance Steering Committee, we wanted to make sure that that was something that was reflected in the revised model that came back. Within those discussions, we also heard a number of I'll call it alternative voices saying that the provision or representation of public members on the board was a key priority in the future. We still heard from the CAOs and through the Governance Steering Committee that is something that should be considered in time, but we also wanted to make sure that what we brought back to local councils reflected directly the feedback that we heard during the first phase. So what is before you is the 15-member elected board that provides that direct representation to each of the councils, and then the review would be done by a third party down the road with that subsequent decision and whether or not to maintain that 15-member board or to consider alternatives or to reconstitute a fully elected board by different size or by different proportion of representation. That decision would ultimately be made by the board itself further down the road after that year 3 review.
So thank you for that, Scott. I guess, you made a comment on an earlier question about the request by the municipalities to have their voices heard in the startup of the new region. I certainly am not one of those that is looking for a voice on startup only. I'm thinking that most of the smaller municipalities are looking for a voice, a permanent voice on that board. So that's just a comment. And I guess a second question around governance. If in fact you do go out after 3 years, which I think is an extremely short period of time for a new board to get up and running and to make any kind of impact, I think that it's not even a term of council. But do you plan to come back to the municipalities for a triple majority support of a change to the board, if in fact that's a recommendation by this third party?
So through the mayor, I'll start by referencing the triple majority process itself would not require a revote on the triple majority. The triple majority vote itself is a transfer of the power of operation between the lower and the upper tier about the ability to operate transit. The decision
Sorry, Scott, so the answer is that this would be a decision by regional council.
So the ultimate decision would be from regional council in terms of how to constitute the board. And any feedback, the objective of tonight is to present what the revised strategies are and then solicit additional feedback. So I think that what you're suggesting and what you're stating tonight in terms of the preference for a longer term in terms of the transition, or that it be an indefinite thing, are certainly points of feedback that we'll be taking tonight and taking back to the GSC for further consideration before we come back for the triple majority vote.
Okay, and thank you for that. And I would just say that once we do give triple majority and you do make a change to the board through the region, our representation at the region is 2 of probably 35 or more. So it does start to sway in the favor of the larger municipalities of St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, and Welland when that vote comes. So just some thoughts around that. If I may, Madam Mayor, one comment with regards to the finance side, and I totally support the previous line of questioning for a longer vision than what you're showing us. You had some very nice numbers that you put together somehow in the previous presentation, and I think those numbers are attainable as well. I can see that in the early days, that 200,000 that we're being asked to ante up in 2023 for no increase in service has got something to do with getting the regional transit up and running, and I understand that. And then in 2025, an additional 400 grand to add another 3,300 hours or whatever it is. Okay, I understand that, but beyond 2025, we lose control of what you're doing because it stays at the region. And we don't have that transit control anymore. So I would like to see this thing out through 2029, 2030. What do you estimate the cost to be for a town like Lincoln? I also would like to see, you so nicely ran the total numbers through all of the municipalities in the previous presentation, and I'd like to see that when you come back for the triple majority, who's paying for what? Because right now, I'll tell you, when I hear that St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, and Welland is going from 77% of the cost of 73, I'm concerned. That's a big number. So, why is that happening? And why are the other municipalities picking up that 3% of a big number? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Matt, do you have any comments?
I'm looking to Ms. Talbot if there's any additional comments regarding the cost escalations and the duration, perhaps for Councillor McPherson.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Actually, I went through some of the old numbers and revisited the original financial strategy. And I would like to point out that the original financial strategy that we went out 10 years is because we didn't actually start any growth until 2026. And in a lot of cases, when we took this approach and we looked at service standards, a lot of the changes that are happening in 2024 and 2025 are actually greater than what the outlook was in the other outlook, because they had a lot more growth happening in the larger communities and less growth in the smaller communities. So what we've done is we've actually pushed a lot of what you were looking at in the long term forward. We've equalized service a little bit more. And some of the reason that those costs are transitioning is because St. Catharines already had, like, very few hours are being added to St. Catharines, whereas like I pointed out earlier, a lot more hours are being added to all of the other communities. So it really did push that growth forward. I can look further out, but I think what you're going to find is, with the exception of inflation, the costs within your communities aren't really anticipated to grow beyond what we're already putting in without future or changing growth projections, because we're really kind of pushing that growth into the early years so that you get the services with the consolidation.
Okay, there's a few things in there that I'm just going to turn back to Councillor McPherson in the event that he just had another comment, because you did raise some you made some statements that might have opened up his thought process. It's his question for the going.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And you know, I guess I know enough about regional transit to just be dangerous, you know, and I certainly don't profess to know the ins and outs of the cost of running a regional transit service. But what I would guess is that a big cost is the capital equipment and the labor piece of it, and that I would think would change fairly. It would be a fairly small change in a municipality like Lincoln. You know, do you add another unit? Okay, what's the cost of adding another unit? And do you add another person or two persons to that? So the cost, the actual cost, is low compared to running a full-time transit system in one of the three major cities. That is huge. And I guess what we're trying to do is support a regional transit system because it makes sense in the big picture, but we're also trying to understand why we're paying more and why would our residents embrace this new system versus what they're paying today, the $1.2 million. You know, Heather, you brought up some numbers previously about 4 times the service. I just don't know. I don't see it because, you know, you still levy us for $1 million, which we really had prior to the on-demand system. We got nothing for, but we paid for it. So now I think you need to bring that $1 million plus the 200,000 into the discussion, not just the 200,000. So I guess I'm with you, but we have challenges ahead. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, good. Councillor Pachuriba.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the presentation. I guess I'm an eternal optimist. So I want to thank you for taking those initial queries that we had and going back. So we've moved from the one size fits all to 12 levies. Thank you for that, right? I think that works. That waylays some of the consternation and some of the unknown going forward. About board representation, you heard us on that. We'd like some representation. We have that. I'd make the recommendation that after the 3 years, if it ain't broke, why fix it? So let's have an analysis of that. Let's keep rolling. Like Councilor McPherson said, maybe tie it to a municipal term. So have a look at that. And I think that that's there. The fact that the service standards are now uniform across the region is another win, right? Uniform hours leads to increased ridership. All one has to do is take a look at the ridership numbers for Lincoln. These have grown exponentially in the midst of a pandemic. Adding a Saturday, adding a Sunday, opening up hours, you're going to have people staying at B&Bs and now they can travel around. And then it's going to further grow our tourism and economy. Rather than look negatively, let's look positively. This is what we asked for. And the region's brought it back. I see an increase in cost at some point, but it's up to our regional representatives, right? We've got a regional councillor and the mayor to be responsible to our taxpayers. Councillor Brunet mentioned there's only one taxpayer. So it's on their shoulders to control those costs. It's logical that as the system grows, the service hours increase, but you're building a reserve, much like we do with roads and sewers and capital infrastructure. You're building a reserve to smooth the curves, the up and downs. So you did listen, and I think it's a great second step. I look forward to the continued rollout as we go on, and I think the main point that you hit on is it's a user pay system. As the hours increase, you become, I guess, a victim of your own circumstances, but it's a responsibility, right? There's no way we could do this ever on our own. We went from a fixed link system to one that can connect to anywhere, right? We've got the changes at the GO station in Beamsville to make it more accessible. We just heard last week that there's going to be hourly GO service from the station in Hamilton on James Street. So these will all be linked together. So you know what? I put faith in the system. I think the system is working. I think the numbers are there. And just, if we can get a little bit more and on the financial side, that would waylay the concerns again, but it's like an arena. It's like a sports field. It's not revenue neutral, but it's a service you need to deliver. And it's a service that we need to deliver to our residents. And we can see them wholeheartedly jumping in on it. We were vilified before on the costs of Ulink based on the ridership. We should be getting pats on the back for doing this. Heather, you said that we're going to get 4 times the service for the dollars we spent. 25 cents on the dollar. I think it's a hell of an investment. So look forward to some of those sharper financials going out. Again, you guys don't, if you had a crystal ball, you'd be in Vegas. You wouldn't be here doing a presentation to us. So if you can, sharpen them a little bit, waylay those concerns that are out there. I think you've hit the nail on the head. So thank you. And just maybe to Mr. Deanne, and I did see him here. I mean, from a tourism aspect, how this service can grow tourism in the town on a weekend now that it's available, right? So.
Okay, and I'll ask Mr. Deanne that question when we get near the end. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Thanks, Your Worship.
Councillor Timmers.
Thank you very much, Maryson. Wow, I don't know how I'm going to follow Councillor Pachariva. I'm kind of on the same page with you, Councillor. I'm very pleased, and thank you, Matt. And we have 2 Matts, Matt and Heather and Scott, for being here tonight. We said the areas that we had concerns, you went away back to the drawing board, you came back. And I am quite pleased with what I'm seeing. I do agree the board composition, I would like to see all municipalities have a permanent representation around that board. I think that's very important. We're all very different municipalities with different needs. And I think that we should all have a voice moving forward on a permanent basis there. As far as the user pay, it's music to my ears. I'm pleased with that. I have one question around the financial part, and perhaps Ms. Talbot, you did touch on this a little bit about the gas tax dollars. I'm just curious, will Lincoln be receiving gas tax dollars annually, and how does that work? And with that, I know you said that they are earmarked for capital expenses. How would that benefit us, and will we benefit from that moving forward?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So currently, under the pilot program, the gas tax, the provincial gas tax, you'll still receive federal gas tax, and that stays within Lincoln, and that's used generally for transportation projects, not transit specifically. But provincial gas tax specifically is already being allocated to the region under the on-demand. So moving forward, that would move to the commission.
Very good. I just be clear on that. Thank you for that answer. So the only other comment I have, when I saw the extended hours, I was so excited to see that, because when we look at our municipality, it is growing beyond belief. Traffic, we hear it every day about traffic. This is what is going to help with those issues. This is going to move people from early in the morning till late at night, and we need this service badly. People will be taking it to work. They'll be taking it, yes, for entertainment, for touring, but they'll be using it on a regular basis. And I see the users, the number of people, it will increase enormously. And I'm so very happy to see those extended hours. So thank you all very much for coming tonight. And I don't have any further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Let me just check here. Okay, Councillor Russell for the second time, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the delegation. Just one last question. Again, it's not as optimistic as the last two questions. Should a municipality no longer feel they're getting value for their contribution, whether it's 2 years down the road, 4 years down the road, 5 years down the road, what ability do they have to remove themselves from this commission?
For you, Madam Mayor, I'll let Mr. Fraser to the councillor speak to the triple majority process and what that decision and discussion will look like.
Thank you. So through the mayor, when we ultimately pursue the triple majority vote, and maybe I'll just start with a very quick overview of the triple majority vote itself. We call it triple majority because 3 majorities are required, one being approval from regional council, so a majority of regional council voting in favor. The second being that a majority of the local councils across Niagara vote in favor of moving forward. So with 12 municipalities in Niagara, 7 would be required to move forward. And then in terms of those who do vote in favor of moving forward, that they constitute a majority of the electors across the region. So electors being roughly equivalent to residents, just 18 plus those eligible to vote in elections, for example. So as that goes forward, what is actually taking place is the Municipal Act is being amended to transfer the legal authority for the operation of transit systems between the 2 tiers of government, from the lower tier to the upper tier in this case. So should triple majority proceed, that would transfer the power from the local area municipalities to operate transit services to the region, and that would be, would be in parallel to the previous authority that was granted for the region to operate the intermunicipal and regional services that it currently operates.
So to clarify, once you're in, you're in.
Once this moves forward, then that power would not be something that local municipalities would continue to have under the Municipal Act.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And second time, Councillor Nicolay. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor Easton, for the opportunity to speak again. Just through you to our director. Looking at these numbers that are brought up, in the long-term forecast, we make budgetary decisions today that, tomorrow, and, with thinking of what's coming on the future with regards to financial obligations or considerations. Has this ever come into our discussions, the proposed financial costing that would ultimately fall on our taxpayer? Has this ever come into our discussions in terms of long-term financial forecasting?
Through you, Mayor Easton, to Councillor Mikulik. No, to be quite honest, it has not come into that discussion, nor any of the regional funding or programs that they run. We look at the taxpayer separately because we consider that levy separately. We do look in totality at the overall cost to a taxpayer, but not in this instance in regards to transit. I will say though, I love all the discussions and questions so far. We did, when Mike was pleasant enough to allow me to attend a lot of the CAO meetings on the transit discussions, all of these questions were asked. The CAOs kept looking at all the different ways to approach this, whether it's longer term budgets, whether it's a different style of council, longer term, shorter term. I think overall, I'm happy with where they looked at all of these things. I'm happy with the costs. I looked at the service levels that were increasing. I don't think it's prudent nor relevant to include out year costs 9-10 years out because it is very opaque. It's very hard to do. I do think it's important to consider what the taxpayer is going to pay today and tomorrow. I think council, meaning regional, will have that hard decision to control budget where appropriate. And I think what they're proposing overall seems reasonable and rational from my perspective on this approach.
I appreciate that answer. I asked that question because we know what we have currently, we know what we're paying currently, and even if we were to face a 5% increase just on the base service that we're currently, I'm just doing the numbers in my head and just trying to explain it. And forgive me for being analytical with the financing piece of this, but I'm certainly appreciating the service. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mikulik. I'm just checking for hands. I don't see any. I want to go to the CAO again, and then I want to go to Mr. Deanne. Go ahead, Mr. Krapopoulos.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and maybe just to pick up on Councillor Mikulik's question, and I think a little bit of the answer that Lawrence gave. All conversations we were having around the table, I think, Councillor, at times, we're responsible for our local area budget. And so while I think we try to anticipate what tax increases will look like coming from other levels, it is often hard to determine what the region's having in terms of what the outlook looks like 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, even 1 year down the road. At the end of the day, we're responsible for our own local budget, but I hear council loud and clear, and I think I've had these conversations with many of you that at the end of the day, there is one taxpayer, and notwithstanding that this is a decision of regional council in terms of the budget impact, in terms of the long-term financial sustainability that was raised. There is going to be an impact to local taxpayers, and I think council's aware of that and cognizant of that. Maybe to reiterate a little bit about what Lawrence said, the CAO has discussed, I think, a number of different options. One of the things that was loud and clear was that what works in Fort Erie or Port Colborne may not work in Grimsby or Lincoln or West Lincoln, and so there isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. There is enhanced service hours that are coming. Transit isn't necessarily based on just ridership. Yes, some money flows on ridership in terms of gas tax, or has in the past, but it is about the number of hours. It is about the number of transit hours that flow across the system. And so I think, again, this is an interim presentation today. I think, both Lawrence and I and Dave have heard a lot, and I think also the team at the regions heard a lot in terms of what you're talking about today. But, I think what we did believe in, some of the principles that we all came to agreement with as CAOs, was really around enhanced services, Yes, the board composition was key. We had a lengthy conversation, and right now that may be interim. But I think, again, Matt and the team have heard council's desire to see a little more permanency there. And it's important that we get local feedback, that we build something towards the long term. So I don't have any other additional comments, Madam Mayor, in terms of today's comments. Again, heard loud and clear, I think, what council's comments and concerns are, and something that we will be taking back as a collective, local staff and regional staff, to the broader CAO group.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Madam Deputy Mayor Njima, I do have a question, if you would just take the chair for a moment.
Absolutely.
My question, Matt, and I really appreciate the evolution of this discussion. It certainly is moving into a different realm after all of this time. And so it really is around service levels, because I think some of the other questions about board composition, many of those concerns are shared by others as well. And I think that's how it was, that there was some considerable pressure that came forward. And so, you've responded to that. And I expect that there will continue to be pressure. And I also want to support that. I think that even though it may be a little bit unwieldy theoretically, that every municipality absolutely, if they want to, has to be able to sit on the board. And how that is figured out is going, I don't know if it's so much of a challenge as it has to be accepted. But this is a major change and money is very tight everywhere. And at the very least, we need to start with making sure that everyone has representation. So I want to reinforce that, because I think our councillors are right on the money. However, I don't feel the risk that others feel because of the way it's all evolved. And if we have people at the table, then there's going to be lots of people who are really going to get into this in a big way and will really understand every detail of it. I suppose at some point in time we could say, you know what, we don't really feel that we need to offer a level of service that looks like X. And maybe we say after 4 years, we can only afford a certain level of support. Now, I would be disappointed to see us take that position, but we do have one taxpayer. And so what would we do if we wanted to cap that? And what difference would it make in terms of what our costs would be? Have you thought about that? Has that been contemplated at all?
Madam Mayor, is that question through to Matt Robinson?
Yes, and I'm only saying that because I can't hear the other speakers very well. For some reason or other, it's very, very garbled, even though I'm in the same place as Mr. Koukopoulos. I can't, I can hear, but I can't, there's not good articulation. So I can hear Matt clearly. So I'm going to ask him to answer the question if you don't mind.
Perfect.
So through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, to Mayor Easton's question, perhaps I'll let Ms. Talbot speak to what financials were contemplated with regard to service levels. And then perhaps there's also some additional context I can provide about requests into the commission for both service expansion and possibly service contraction going forward. So Ms. Talbot, maybe I'll let you go first.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor. When we're often asked this question about whether or not we'll want service in the future, and I'd have to think that the commission is not going to put service somewhere where there isn't a demand. So in the future, if that service starts to grow, it's because your population is actually warranting that demand, which means that the taxpayer base is probably growing. The average contribution per household may be almost shrinking because you'll have more households that are driving that demand. So, I mean, I have to believe that a commission isn't going to put service somewhere that there isn't that kind of return on investment in a transit service delivery, because there are a lot of competing needs. Just as you reach your budget and have competing needs, the commission will have the same conflicts and will actually want to have the highest return on their demand. On the flip side of that, if for some reason you do believe that it's growing faster, then it may be that you suggest that it slows down, or you wait in the queue of where they do the service delivery, because it will be a long-term plan that they're implementing as well. So I always think there's going to be that give and take because of just the fact that we have to be efficient with service delivery. We have to look for the best way to utilize every dollar that we realize or that we spend. And I think that's true with every division, with every municipality, and even at the regional level.
Well, I think that theoretically, Ms. Talbot, you're correct. However, I can find many, many examples where politicians, even in the face of great demand, will put a cap on something for a variety of reasons. And it may not sound very logical, but it happens. You've probably seen it yourself. Matt, do you have anything further?
Maybe through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, I guess to allay some concerns around how service may increase beyond just what's laid out in the service plan. So the service plan has a very prescribed increase over the course of the duration between 2023 and 2025. Beyond that, I think where we're looking is there's also an opportunity for municipalities, either by virtue of their representative or through council request to the commission for additional service above and beyond what the commission may provide. And subsequently, I could imagine that going forward, a subsequent retraction of service may also, that request from town council or town council's representatives into the commission may also be available. I think the intention was for municipalities like Niagara Falls, for example, who have high tourism components, they want to go beyond what the commission is willing to provide and enhance their local municipal levy contribution into providing more service. So should the town decide that the commission isn't providing or accelerating fast enough and that you want something in a niche new development, if the commission hasn't already decided, as Ms. Talbot has indicated, that demand is there and we want to service and grow the service and demand in that location, there's also an opportunity for council to provide those recommendations into the commission to look at service expansion to specific locations within municipalities. And although that was the intention, was to grow things and request acceleration, I could see, based on some of the commentary today, that there is an opportunity for, I love when the lights go out, there is also that opportunity for presumably a subsequent flip side of that would be a contraction of service. So if ridership is low, I think the commission's going to look and say, the demand is low, how do we use our resources in a better way? We're going to communicate that out to municipalities. So I think there's a subsequent put and take around how to grow or contract the service going forward based on requests into the future commission.
Okay, so Madam Deputy Mayor, I think that's an encouraging remark, Mr. Robinson, because that takes us away from a worry about needing to retract ourselves from a triple majority. It sounds like there's a more practical way that we could, or at least we're anticipating that there's going to be a more practical and possibly more flexible way. Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Regina.
You're welcome. Back over to you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, now, I'm tempted, Madam Clerk, even though everybody that wanted to speak once has, and we've had some people speak twice, but it's only 7:25. This is a pretty important item. And so I'm going to suggest that if anyone has another question, given more of the information has come forward, I'm going to give you a chance. But I'm only going to allow people to speak once and just one question. Let's just keep it at that, and then we'll finish up. If there aren't any questions, great. But I see that Councillor McPherson, he has a question. Go ahead, Councillor. We may now, I don't know when Matt and company are coming back, so I'm just going to do that. Go ahead, Councillor McPherson.
Just a minute. Sorry, before you go ahead, Councillor McPherson. So I just want to relay that Scott and Matt Robinson will be staying on for the staff report as well. So if there's any questions for that, so carry on, Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the opportunity. And just rolling this growth piece around in my head, I'm trying to figure out how that would work. How does a regional transit system determine when a particular municipality is going to cost them more money? And I would think it comes down to demand. That it's not so much, well, there's more houses being built, so we need to charge them more. It's in the demand numbers, because we may put up, pick a number. We may put up 100 houses and none of them use the service. So I'm just trying to understand the thinking at GSW, or whatever the term is, of charging based on growth, and how does that happen?
Is that a question that you can answer, Mr. Robinson?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll actually let Ms. Talbot speak to the model and just clarify how things will be assigned going forward.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it would be on demand. As you said, there could be 100 houses built. If they're within the areas where there's already service, it may not warrant new service. If they're walking a kilometer to get service, well, if you look at on demand, actually, if those households start utilizing the service, that puts more pressure on the service to meet the 30-minute time cap, which then increases your demand for service. So if you have 4 vehicles working, as the demand grows and you can no longer meet your 30-minute pickup and drop-off times, then that would warrant more demand. That would warrant more service. But you wouldn't add a vehicle to your fleet if you're maintaining the service level that you'd like. So within the strategy that we're looking at here, we're normalizing service hours. So we're expanding the fleet hours that you're currently utilizing, making sure that we have equal access across all communities. If those late hours are not utilized to the same extent, perhaps right now we're estimating that you would have 2 vehicles. It would be down to 1 vehicle. If 1 vehicle can meet those service standards, then we would reduce the vehicle, and those costs would reduce in proportion on your on the regional levy.
Through you, and thank you for that, Heather. And it makes a lot of sense. So what we can expect in the future is, beyond 2025, when we've paid, for the extra hours, if there's no change through an added vehicle, we can expect that our levy stays the same. And then when, well, there's inflation. I understand that there's inflation, but there's no, another 200,000, the year after, another 200,000 the year after. It's basically, you have the service, you've maxed out on the service. All we're going to do is add vehicles, and a vehicle costs X. Labor, the running of the vehicle costs you X. So let's say that's $100,000 a year. Okay, Town of Lincoln, you're going to pay another $100,000 because we're adding a full-time vehicle in 2026. Does that make sense? Am I walking through the logic okay?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct. If that demand is there and we need that vehicle in order to service the demand that's being requested, then that cost would be allocated. Just like the reverse, if we have 2 vehicles and that second vehicle is no longer needed, your service hours would adjust and you'd have a reduction in your costs.
Okay, so one more question, Madam Mayor, if I may. So what happens to a new bus on the street in Niagara Falls. The same thing applies where the town of Niagara Falls pays that extra for that bus.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The capital costs are allocated slightly different. They're allocated based on an 85% to the large three and 15% to the smaller communities. So it's still primarily going to the large communities, but there is that small portion, that's that 15%, which is allocated to the other 9, spread across, because the rationale is that you will be accessing those communities for service. So 15% is allocated amongst all others, and 85% is allocated within the large 3.
Access those. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, I don't see any other hands, so I don't want to push my luck on breaking the rules here. So thank you very much. Thanks very much, Mr. Robinson. Thanks, Ms. Talbot, and Mr. Greenfield. You've had a bit of an easy ride tonight, but we'll see if we can. We'll see if we can change that in the future. I want to thank you all for the presentation and for the questions. We are grinding it out a bit now. I'm sure you're finding this in all municipalities, but the devil is in the details, I think it's fair to say. So, Councillor, this concludes the presentation portion of the agenda, and I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson and seconded by Councillor Russell that Council receive and file as information the following presentation. Matt Robinson, Director, GO Implementation Office, regarding Niagara Transit Governance, revised strategies reflecting Phase 1 feedback. Madam Clerk, would you please call out the vote?
Thank you, Councillor Brunei.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Miklick,
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Vajima,
Yes.
Councillor Russell, Councillor Russell. Yes, okay. Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Support.
and that carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councillors will now consider agenda item 12.3, report AD 16-21, Niagara Transit Governance, revised strategies report, and Niagara Regional Report LMTC-C-3-2021. And we'll just do a little bit of a recheck here. And our CEO and Director of Finance, Administration and Innovation will provide some opening comments and speak to the report. Mr. Kirkopoulos?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Council. I think just in the effort to not regurgitate or repeat anything that's already said, there isn't really anything new other than what you heard in the presentation. The presentation really is an encapsulation of the report. I don't know if, again, right now, it really is about receiving this information and really sending us all collectively back, a little bit to the drawing board in terms of what we heard today and adding to a future report that'll be coming forward. So unless Lawrence has anything to add on the finances that I may have missed, we can either take questions or go directly to the recommendation.
All right, Mr. Wagner?
Through your Mayor Easton, there's no further things I can add to this report. I think it reflects accurately the feedback received originally from Council. It encapsulates all the feedback and information that the CAOs discussed. Beyond that, I'd be open to questions or anything of that nature.
Okay. Thanks very much, Lawrence. I'll go then to Councillor Pachariva.
Thank you, Your Worship. So and now we're at our staff report. So through you to Mr. Deanne. So with the common set of operating hours from 6 a.m. to midnight, Monday to Saturday, and 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Sunday. So obviously there's tourism benefits. And then the follow-up to that is this will have, and again, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but what would the effect of the tourism workforce now have with this expanded model? Mr. Deanne, through you, Madam Mayor, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Deanne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to the councillor. So great question. Enhanced public transit options, especially the weekend service, councillor, that you just mentioned, will help people get around the community. So from a tourism perspective, there are natural linkages between public transit options and increased tourism, and thereby creating economic growth. From an employment perspective, as you just alluded to, councillor, having enhanced service will assist locals in getting to work, especially those working on weekends, which tend to sort of congregate around the hospitality and tourism sector. So consistently, we have heard throughout the pandemic and even before that employees do need public transit options to get to work, and this need must be met. And I believe our economic development strategy talked about this as well. So this option and the possibility for even more increased transit will help address these concerns. So a great question, and happy to be part of this discussion, and very much looking forward to future conversations. Thanks, councillor.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that all for you, Councillor Petrie?
No, one more, Your Worship, if I may.
Okay.
And going to throw this again through you, maybe to Mr. Deanne or Mr. Graham. So the fact that we have an on-demand transit service should reduce the number of single occupant vehicles on the road, thereby increasing the active transportation opportunities and increasing the safetiness. So just to Mr. Graham and Mr. Deanne, to those, again, dovetailed back to not only our active transportation strategy, but also our transportation master plan.
Okay, Mr. Deanne, do you have anything to in response?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So to the councillor, I mean, with increased tourism comes increased visitation, and currently, which is centered around sort of, vehicular traffic and personal vehicles. So with the increase of public transit options and how the town is, along with the region, consistently advocating for GO Transit service to Beamsville, this does provide additional options that take people away from personal vehicles and move towards public transit options and other active transportation. So it is a great option, and councillor, great, thanks for that question, but I can turn to Director Graham to talk from a climate change perspective.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and to Councillor Pachariva, and thanks, Mr. Deanne, for your comments. And I totally agree with what Mr. Deanne was saying, and to expand on that a little bit further, yes, by investing in and growing transit is in total alignment with the town's master transportation plan. Just providing more mobility options for the public and for our residents. Yeah, and ideally, removing cars from the road if you don't have to take your car and you can take transit. That's definitely a major benefit and something that we want to continue to promote. And supporting active transportation, so you can walk to a bus stop and to a different stop and get off. So it totally aligns with all of that. So so good comment. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Koukopoulos, since we're moving along here with staff, I'm going to go to you just in case you're part of that thread, and then I'll go to Councillor Russell.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think just on the councillor's question around the reduction in the number of single occupancy vehicle trips. I mean, I think that's I think that's everyone's goal when they look at transit. And I think when we looked at as a CAO's group and some of the research a few of us did, I think separate and aside from those meetings, when you look at places like Windsor that really made that a focus, not only of residents in the community, but of staff as well. Who lived in the community. I think there's ways to do that in terms of developing an entire strategy around it. Definitely, I think with the maturation of transit and transit provisions across the entire region, it's an aspirational goal that we have, but I wouldn't want to say that, there's a direct correlation, but definitely, Councillor, I think as we mature as a broader region, that maturation may lead to, some of those, I think, tangential reductions. But there are some places doing it, but they've been in the transit game for a long time.
Okay, certainly something to move toward. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Wagner, or perhaps to Mr. Robinson. Reviewing the commission common fare strategy, going from a $6 regional trip to a $3 flat fee. Just wondering some of the thoughts on that. It seems like we are leaving money on the table. I'm thinking if somebody's going from one point of the region to another, say Grimsby to Fort Erie, for the cost of $3, that wouldn't even cover the cost of that driver to get to St. Catharines. So why would we go down to that flat fee instead of trying to find some kind of common ground to make sure that we are at least getting some sort of return on some of these trips?
Mr. Robinson.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I was deferring to Mr. Wagner first for that response, but I'll happily take it here to Councillor Russell. I don't want to get into transit principles or philosophy too much. I could spend all evening talking that through. The philosophy in simple terms is that the lower the cost of transit, the more accessible it becomes, the easier it is to use, the more equitable it becomes to the entire community. So right now, we know from a regional perspective, our $6 fare is arguably cost prohibitive. As much as we can say $6 from, say, Grimsby to Fort Erie, you cannot get that far for $6. The return trip of $12, we hear regularly on Facebook and social media that to some in the community, that still remains a cost, a prohibitive cost for them when you look at making that expenditure on multiple times a week, or even buying a monthly pass at $160. That $160 to take that trip at $6 per, yes, it's a deep discount buying a monthly pass, but in order to drive ridership, it's well established that the lower the cost to deliver that, the more ridership goes up, the more coverage extends, which is why there's a growing trend out there as $0 fares for transit. That's being discussed in places like Brampton and beyond, where larger TTC, Brampton, and others in these large municipalities are really looking at transit as being a no-cost social equity equalizer in looking for access to transit. Because transit drives or creates revenue, and municipal councils can appreciate this, working with arenas and pools and other things with user fees. Because there's a user fee for transit, people generally or naturally assume that the cost is going to offset, whereas, as Ms. Talbot said previously, with the current rate, the cost recovery at 10% creates an expectation of a higher level of offset, when at 10%, it's marginal. So the philosophy of being able to draw down the cost of taking transit and equalizing that to be $3 regardless of where you're going, all of the transit modeling and ridership modeling shows that single, it's called single fare, that single fare across municipalities in Niagara would lead to significant growth in ridership in the long term. And that goes way back to the demand modeling from the Niagara Transit Governance Study.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Robinson, and thank you, Madam Mayor. So just a follow-up comment, and my question is, the request or the municipalities that are examining that zero fare or low, very, very low cost fare, is that request coming from the residents themselves that are subsidizing those costs, or is it coming from the commissions that are in place in order to justify their existence by making the commission and the model that they've created more successful by having a higher utilization? Like where does that request come from?
So through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Russell, from my experience in the research that we've done, it usually is politically driven. Councils are looking, and presumably that is based on trends in the US to the south, larger cities who are contemplating this, as well as from their constituents, their riders, who are looking and saying, what social equity should be a driver of transit. And if transit is an investment in your community, that's where these new perspectives are coming from, is really from sort of that social equity fabric of the community. And though staff are taking things away and examining what that looks like, for the most part, those are politically driven directions and contemplations that then send staff off to look at what would a $0 fare look like in our community, and what does research show as to what that may do for transit growth going forward.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Through you to, I'm not sure who exactly, it's just with regards to Councillor Pachariva's comments earlier about a substantial amount of uptick or use with this service. And would there be a reduction of the number of vehicles on Ontario Street, or would there be more on-demand vans on Ontario Street? And I ask that also because currently the wait times are 15 to 18 minutes. How would service be impacted should there be this great number of people using this service?
Okay, let me just check first, Councillor Mikulik, to determine whether this has even been, whether this has been part of the analysis, future analysis. Mr. Robinson? Matt, do you have, are there any numbers? Are we going down into a place where that hasn't been examined as of yet? How can you answer the councillor's question?
So through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Mikulik, the reality is on-demand is a shared ride service. So as demand starts to increase, you're having multiple riders heading in the same direction from the same area within the same vehicle. So yes, naturally, more demand means adding more vehicles. But when you're sharing rides with 2 or 3 parties in the same vehicle, now you have upwards of 6 riders who could be in 3 vehicles, who are now all heading towards the same direction to the community center, and they are all in the same vehicle. That's now 1 vehicle for the 2 that are off the road. So I think where you get the benefit from the long-term reduction in volume is the ride share nature. This isn't just single vehicle taxi cab like service. This is a shared ride service that really does create those efficiencies of bringing multiple parties along that path in the same vehicle. And I think that's where you realize the reduction in vehicles, say on Ontario Street, as you indicated.
I appreciate that clarification. I did not know that. I've never used the service, so I could not comment as to how it truly works in the real world. And I appreciate how that works. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I don't see any other hands. And so I'm going to go forward. Mr. Papopoulos, did you have a?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I was going to make comments just on that principle of reliance on vehicles, but I think I see no further questions. Others have answered it. So I will.
I don't, I'd be happy to have you go ahead if you're. All right, thank you then. I have a motion moved by Councillor Reimer, seconded by Councillor Pachariva, that Council receive and file for information report AD 16-21, the Niagara Transit Governance Revised Strategies Report, and Niagara Region Report LNTC-C3 2021. Madam Clerk, would you please call the vote?
Thank you, Councillor Brunet.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Mikulik,
Yes.
Councillor Pachiriva,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
and Mayor Easton.
Support.
And that carries.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all the presenters. And thank you, councillors, for your comprehensive questions and also for the involvement of our staff. It was a very good discussion. Well, now we'll move on now to item 12, reports of municipal officers. Councillor Foster is not with us this evening. However, his report was related to the transit report. I do have a report, and I want to welcome residents that are joining us for this meeting, also members of council and staff. And I have a few items that I wish to share with you, including some public engagements that I've attended on behalf of council. Let me start by saying that it's been quite the last few weeks here in Niagara. We've had a number of announcements, and I want to share a few with you. Today, I attended an announcement at the region on the International Mall for an announcement by Environment Minister. I'm sorry, he's not the Environment Minister, that's not correct. He's the Heritage Minister, Minister Stephen Guilbeault, regarding an additional 1.8 million from the federal government, which will address a significant support to COVID expenses relating to the planning of the 2022 Canada Games. This is the third announcement made by the federal government since 2017 for the Games, which will take place in St. Catharines in 2022. The original announcement was for 29 million for the Canada Summer Games Park, and then a second announcement of 12 million for the operating costs related to preparing for the Games. Canadian success of the current Tokyo Olympics is certainly a testament to the vital supporting role by regional governments in the Canada Games, which are showing to be one of the most important platforms for competition leading to the Olympics. Next year will be a very exciting time in Niagara, and every local area municipality will be hosting a province, ours is Newfoundland, or a territory as part of the entertainment. Tomorrow I will be meeting in Lincoln with Provincial Environment and Parks Minister Piccini. It's a chance to speak with him about Lincoln. It's a very early morning breakfast meeting, and it provides us with an opportunity to boast further about this region. The following day, we will have Minister McNaughton in town, also sharing a funding announcement, and I encourage everyone to wait to hear for this monumental announcement, one that is the largest capital announcement, infrastructure capital announcement that we've ever made. And it will be a very successful announcement for our community. I want to talk about citizen engagement because it is becoming one of the most important initiatives in the town. Last week, CEO Kirkopoulos and I had an opportunity to meet with a young man, citizen of Lincoln, by the name of Tim Wilson. Tim's lived here for a number of years, and he's lived in different parts of the community, so he has a pretty fulsome perspective on the town. And I want to thank Tim for getting in touch with me and for meeting with Mike and I for an hour or so. And he had questions about the roles that municipalities play in the municipal planning process. And it's certainly something that's on a lot of people's minds. Growth of communities is something that we're talking about more often, and the shortening of the response times for municipalities when dealing with planning applications is moving new development forward at a faster pace. The province, as we know, sets the overarching policy in order that we preserve our natural heritage and prevent further losses to our natural environment. And they are acting in response to population growth numbers that are being set by the federal government due to the need for specialized skills training and the housing shortage, which is being felt by in the area of affordable housing and also in the areas to address homelessness and also poverty overall. The region is responsible for ensuring the official plan includes direction from the province. And at the local level, we tailor our official plan to reflect the regional plan. But we include, it's inclusive of our landscape and the space that's available to develop residential, commercial, and industrial in order that we have balance across the board economically. The local area municipality is the regulator of policy, not the creator of planning policy. That is a point that is not well understood and is a reason why many expect councils to say no to development. In Lincoln, 2/3 of our land is protected by the Greenbelt, the Conservation Authority, and the Escarpment Commission. Within the remaining lands to develop, the province sets the density limits, and this is the pinch point. Within the remaining lands to develop, we have a high degree of, and with that high degree of protection, the land prices have soared in value, and there's pressure to build higher. In 2014, the population growth for Lincoln was set at 32,000 by 2041. Spring of 2020, those numbers had changed considerably. And even now, with new numbers coming forward in preparation for the Niagara official plan, the 2051 numbers are deemed to be too low. Only in the minds of the planners, not in the minds of people that live in our communities. And recently, and the reason that I'm bringing this up and bringing your attention to this is because council believes that the public should have a say in the projections, which will be experienced over the next 30 to 40 years. And that's the time frame we're talking about. It's not immediate. While it's accurate that we cannot deny growth, we can certainly shape where that growth takes place. And that includes using everything we can to ensure your priorities are fairly represented. And we have done that, I think, quite successfully in addressing density outside the central areas of the town, and also the use of secondary plans and other policies such as the urban design policies that were developed by previous councils. I encourage everyone to get accurate facts, to involve yourselves in the public meetings being held by the region on the official plan. They're starting to share more information now than we've had in recent weeks. There are a number of plans that have not reached the council table, however, and some of you are asking questions through Speak Up Lincoln, and I encourage you to continue to do that in order that you receive accurate and specialized information. The site is monitored by the planning professionals around planning questions, and those same specialists are available and actively involved in negotiating on your behalf with developers. And this direct negotiation is not a role for councillors or the mayor, but definitely an important and effective role for professional staff who will come out and meet you in your homes and in your yards so that you can share the concerns that you have on a development that's close to you. At the moment, the landscape appears very much a we versus government scenario, but I do encourage you to take the time, as Tim took it, to participate, hear the facts on the process as it is and as it goes forward, and also have your say and push where you feel we should be pushed. Tim did that. I appreciate it. This council is listening, and we're trying to do everything we can to share your views and create a better product and a better community. I will be arranging an open forum on the official plan, and we'll work with staff to share more information on how and when that can happen. The challenge with living in such a beautiful region is now with COVID here, many people realize that Niagara is green, it's picturesque and beautiful, and like many before us, they want to call Lincoln and Niagara home. This change causes angst. I get it. We all get it. And we understand this because we have also experienced it and we've lived through it. Many of us have, no matter where we have lived. I hope that together with Council, we can create and address the challenges before us around balanced growth, affordable housing, and infrastructure reinvestment. I want to acknowledge another resident and her work. Her name is Sonia Reiser. And I'm sure you saw her photographs and her posts in the last 2 to 3 weeks, who with her colleagues organized a very successful campaign and reminder that hate has no home here. It's actually a very colorful and quite eye-catching sign. From the signs that have, there's good coverage all over Lincoln. And we can say comfortably that there's a shared feeling that we in Lincoln want to protect our values of growth, grow, prosper, and belong. And the way to do that is, in Sonia's mind, and she's right, is to be active and pursue those values to make a difference. So thank you very much, Sonia. Well done. And I think you did us all a great favor. And lastly, I want to share with you a bit of what I did last week and over the weekend as I was driving around. There's so many reasons to cruise around the neighborhoods. And I wasn't just looking at the safety features, although that was the subject matter on my tweets. I did want people to understand that all over the town, we've put a number of safety features in, and I'll do more of those. I think it's important to know there's a pretty big investment going on with many road safety initiatives. But it's great to see what's happening in the parks and to check out masses of seniors on the pickleball courts if you go down there in the morning. And certainly many people, foursomes and twosomes of tennis. So the people that came forward and told us this was important are certainly out there playing. And the bike pump and the skateboard tracks remain very busy, and every splash pad is as popular as ever everywhere in town. The streets are busy. New neighborhoods are going through the typical exercises of shared fence building. People are out on every corner having little chats. And I've seen many remarkable garden designs and just a great sense of community that's evolving all over town. And on behalf of Council, I want to thank everyone who's putting in this extra effort, because it's clear that you're making a place in your community and you're doing it very deliberately with what you know. And at the moment, it happens to be with plants and nice outside furniture. But one story sticks out. This is from Saturday, later on Saturday, and I came upon this large fun group, about 15 teens on Saturday. We had a chat about what they were doing and how they were finding their way around their new community. Yes, they had every one of them had recently moved here. And I highlight that because it is this youth, it's these groups that will be the future of our community. And every youth that calls Lincoln home, they'll be the next clerk in the grocery store, the next volunteer at the museum, or even the next Olympic hopeful. Like many others before them, they called our community home. And when I spoke to them, they were happy and they were optimistic, and they weren't filled with anger or angst, but they had this optimism that they could accomplish so much in this wonderful town, in this region, and in this province. And it made me feel more optimistic as well. I encourage them to also get into the habit of speaking up and staying in touch, so that we can continue to make decisions that will continuously meet their needs. It is such a pleasure to watch the growing diversity of our town. There are so many children of all ages, and families are bringing an energy that we haven't seen since the 50s and 60s. Embrace it. It is our future. Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Brunet and seconded by Councillor McPherson that council receive and file as information the following report of municipal officers, mayor's report, and the written report of regional councillor Rob Foster. Madam Clerk, would you please call it the vote?
Councillor Brunet,
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Miklik,
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Support.
and that carries.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We move now to motion to consider confidential items. Item 13.1. Before I read the motion and we motion to move into closed, I would like to explain what will happen for those watching this electronic meeting. First, there will be a closed session statement that the clerk will go through for all of council and staff that will be attending the closed session. And once that is completed, we will move on with the motion to move into closed. The clerk will be turning off the live webcast during the closed portion of the meeting. Once we have completed the closed portion of the meeting, we will resume with the live webcast, carry on with the public portion of the meeting, and we'll read the motions, if there are any, in public session. Madam Clerk, would you please conduct the closed session statement for all of council and others attending the closed session?
Thank you. All members are reminded that any discussions in closed session are to remain confidential as per our procedural bylaw and the code of conduct for the council of the town of Lincoln. Before we begin, I need each member that is attending electronically to confirm the following: that you understand that matters are to remain confidential, confirm that no one else is present with you, confirm that no one can hear this closed session, confirm that you are not using any electronic devices other than your own tablet, computer, telephone for the video conferencing, and confirm that you are not recording this portion of the meeting. If you acknowledge all of the above, please reply with "I understand," confirm to all of the statements as I read your name aloud. Mayor Easton,
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Councillor Rajima,
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Councillor Russell,
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Councillor Brunet,
I understand and confirm to all the statements.
Councillor Pachariva,
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Councillor McPherson,
I understand and confirm to all the statements.
Councillor Miklik,
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Councillor Timmers,
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
and Councillor Reimer,
I understand and confirm to all the statements.
and our CAO Mike Kirkopoulos.
I understand and confirm to all of the statements.
Madam Mayor, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I have a motion, councillors, moved by Councillor Russell and second by Councillor Timmers. Under section 239 of the Municipal Act, notice is hereby given that council adjourned to closed session in order to address item 13.1 as follows. Pursuant to section 239 subsection 2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees as it pertains to the Chief Administrative Officer performance review. Madam Clerk, would you please call the vote?
Thanks. Councillor Brunet,
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Miklik,
Yes.
Councillor Pachariva,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
and Mayor Easton,
Forward.
and that carries.
Madam Clerk, would you please proceed with the technical requirements to move into closed session?
Yes.